Hi everyone, I'm Joe. Today it's time for me to do my monthly reading wrap-up for May 2022. However, before I talk about May and the books I read, I will just mention that today marks a little milestone of sorts, and that is the fact that this is my 101st monthly reading wrap-up since I started my channel. So I have passed 100 monthly reading wrap-ups, and the next milestone will of course be 200. Which is in another 8.5 years time. So I've got a while to go before I'm going to be saying this again. It also marks today the fact that it is my birthday, coincidentally. So I sort of like that little coincidental milestone of, both video and birthday. Anyway, May was a really good reading month. I read 5 books in total. Most of them were really good, with one exception that was dubious, but that is often not unusual to happen. And the first of those is Raising Steam, written by Terry Pratchett. This is the penultimate Discworld novel. It is the 40th of 41. I've already done a review of this, which will be scheduled to go in quite a few weeks' time. And I'm both happy to have read this finally, because I stopped reading Discworld when my collection was broken many years ago, and now I'm rereading them or reading them for the first time. But a little bit sad because I know now that there's only one more Discworld novel, which I will read within a few days of this video going live. I will probably have read the final Discworld novel. So knowing there's no more Discworld to read, and I literally learned to read and take Pratchett in the Discworld books, is sad in a way, but all these things happen in time. It didn't faze me, and I'm happy that I've read Discworld, and there will be lots more Discworld videos still to come though, because I've got ideas on other things to do with Discworld, indeed Tea Pratchett in general as well. So I feel as though my year of Tea Pratchett, which has become, as I'm going, it's going to be 2 years of Tea Pratchett, will slowly coming to an end. And this is a fun book where basically I should talk about the actual book now, although I'll talk about it more in review. Essentially, somebody realises what the power of steam can do. They invent the steam engine, and unsurprisingly, essentially the steam train comes to the Discworld, and the railway, and this creates a bit of a revolution in the Discworld, because this is basically marrying up the idea of fantasy with magic and the idea of technology, steam power. So it's interesting and brings some interesting ideas to light with great writing and a great world. And frankly, I would recommend this if you are a Discworld fan. The second book that I read in May was Speaking from Among the Bones, written by Alan Bradley. This is the 5th book in the Flavia Duluth series. This is quite a sort of nice sort of murder mystery series where Flavia Duluth herself, she's a young girl in the very first novel. Obviously at this point she's a little bit older now, and I assume by the later books she's probably fully into her sort of mid to late teens by then. I do not know yet, but we'll see. Basically each book is as you might expect from a sort of murder mystery like this. Basically a murder happens. It happens to be close to where they live in this big old family country home. Flavia is a budding chemist. She knows all about chemicals and that sort of thing. So she gets involved and starts trying to basically play detective. She's actually fairly good at it, although obviously she's young. The times as well means it's a bit problematic, but she gets involved and things go from there. The characters are great, the plotline is fun, the mystery is actually interesting, and there's a few little turns it takes that I didn't necessarily expect. And overall I would recommend this series. Don't start with this book though, because personally I would start with the first, and if you like it you'll come to see the development of Flavia. The books do follow on relatively closely in terms of time, so definitely start with the first. The third book that I read is one that's difficult to put on any sort of graph or markdown on my reading spreadsheet for the year, because it is Multispecies Cities, Solarpunk Urban Futures, written by about 15 different authors with 5 editors. So this makes it very hard to say about who wrote it, who edited it even. For the record, on my shelf, I am personally putting it under the last editor on the list, which is Serena Olibari, purely because this is by World Weaver Press. I have several other books by World Weaver Press which are edited thoroughly by Serena Olibari, so they're going to go next to her on the shelf. This is essentially a series of short stories based around the very niche subgenre of Solarpunk, which is essentially science fiction with a very specific focus on renewable resources and renewable energy in particular, and sort of conservation and that kind of thing. So, I mean, the cover itself is personally beautiful. This is obviously a picture that they've had drawn for them, which I think is really nice. The stories, which are almost entirely by authors that I'm not particularly familiar with, although there is one by Taiyo Fuji, whom I am a big fan of, and all the stories are related to a sort of an alternative world than we've got now if things were to go worse, and how we would be trying to cope with the fact that there are less renewable resources available, and we have to actually think about things for change and not just keep drilling up oil and gas and just keep polluting the atmosphere. If we have to think about the future for change and actually care, what might happen there and what we'd do. And these are interesting stories. They're thoughtful, they're varied because the authors are very varied in diversity in terms of where they are from in the world and that sort of thing. So this is a very interesting collection and one that I'm very happy to have read. I would recommend this particular collection if you want to read something within the Solarpunk. This could be an interesting place to start because it's interesting and it's very varied, and I really did enjoy this overall. The fourth book that I read in the month was the one book that I didn't particularly like, and that is The Secret Speech, written by Tom Rob Smith. This is the second book featuring his character of Leo Domidov. The first book is Child 44, which they made into a movie not all that many years ago now, which I greatly liked that book. I haven't watched the movie, and I thought this would be more the same, and whilst it is, it has a very different feel to it to me, and frankly I didn't particularly enjoy it. It felt much darker than the first, which frankly, considering the first book is about a serial killer that is killing children, how can you get darker? So while this manages it, it's not just darker, it's a case of it feels depressing, and that's actually what killed the book for me. I didn't enjoy it because really, I mean, it felt a chore to read this, frankly. I mean, from about a quarter of the way through the book, I'd already kind of given up on it, really, so I can't even describe the plot too well to you. It's about unsurprisingly, a speech. This is obviously historical fiction, so it's set in a Russia that did exist, with obviously characters that, some of them existed but not acting in the way they did, and kind of like alternative reality, obviously. And a speech was written that was meant to be very political, and it never got released until now. This speech is now out in the public, and it's affecting basically all of the former, essentially what is the KGB former members, who were given free rein, and they were given all these important positions, and for others, brilliant. This speech basically denounces all of these former people and says that actually they're essentially just thugs and criminals. Leo used to be one, so there's a massive issue there, and it's got a deep and meaningful plot. It was just so hard work that I couldn't enjoy it, sadly. So I think I'm just going to say that I like Child 44 didn't like this. I'm not reading the third book of his, which I do happen to have, because this was hard enough. So I think, you know, I'll just stick with the fact that I've read Child 44, I enjoyed it, you know, and call it a day in that regard. So now it's time for the fifth and final book, and that is one that I really enjoyed, A Summer Beyond Your Reach, written by Zhao Ji. This was translated by, amongst others, Ken Liu, although this is a short story collection which I had actually forgotten when I started reading it. I knew that I wanted to read it, and I thought it was a full-length novel, so having a short story collection where each short story is translated into English by different translators was an interesting experience. I really enjoyed this collection. I originally wanted to read it because a friend of mine, Rachel, whom I blame and thank for making me read a lot of books, is again going to be getting blame and thanks because she made this sound really interesting. She brought it to my attention over a year ago now, and now finally read it, and I'm really glad that I can blame and thank Rachel for this because it was really interesting. So it is short stories with a thematic choice, I suppose you could say, of all the stories have something generally to do with time and time passing and life happening. It's hard to explain, but they are really meaningful stories, amazingly well written, really thoughtful ideas. Some of them are indeed science fiction, some of them are just fiction, frankly. Yeah, there's science part is not really there, so it's just general fiction. And I mean, one of them's even got a slight fantasy feel to it, although it's definitely is science fiction. And the overall feel of the collection is that it's well written, well thought out. The author had an interesting time and a very meaningful time writing each and every short story. These meant a lot to her, and indeed there is an author's note on each story, why she wrote them the way she did and what they meant to her. And that was really nice to see and experience as well, because you get to see an idea of how the story lies in her mind, therefore how it might affect you. And obviously if you've read it and you've read the short story in a very different way, you had drastically different ideas than the author, then it will again make you think and think, why did I read this short story in this way when the author meant it in a very drastically different way. For the most part, I had sort of similar thoughts to reading as to the author when she wrote the short story. My thoughts sort of were, yeah, yes, that does make sense why she wrote this, because that's kind of what I was thinking. And I would really recommend this collection. It was well written, very thoughtful and personal ideas to the author, lovingly written, interesting stories and themes, and it's just a collection I'm happy to have read. I enjoyed the short stories. Each one was really meaningful and had some really nice ideas in them. I don't want to talk too much about any one short story, but they have that theme of time and aging, and of somebody going from childhood to being an elder, and it's an interesting collection which I would really recommend. And frankly I really did enjoy that collection, by the fact that I've kept saying the fact that I've enjoyed it so much overall. Now, if you've read any of these books, then please leave a comment, because this is indeed all I've read for the month. If you'd like to know more about any of these, then again, please leave a comment and I will answer to the best of my ability if I know, obviously, that particular information that you're asking. I will link all of these books on Goodreads in the description box below, along with my social media links, as I always do in every video, along with a link to Rachel as well, who is a really nice person and a great booktuber. And with that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another time. And here's to eventually monthly reading wrap up number 200. Yeah, another 8.5 years time. It'll be a while. Bye for now.